So I'm Maureen. I am Division Counsel for Tilson. Our CEO, Josh Broder, spoke earlier. Tilson is an infrastructure deployment and professional services company. I also work closely with SQF, an affiliate of Tilson that is a competitive local exchange carrier, or CLEC, in 49 states. I spend a lot of my time doing really exciting stuff like pole attachment agreements, franchise agreements, right-of-way use agreements, and really getting into hand-to-hand combat with local jurisdictions, obtaining the entitlements to site wireless infrastructure in the right-of-way. Working with Tilson and SQF, which really have a national footprint, I've had the opportunity to work on a diverse array of projects in a really diverse geographic area. Tilson has 22 offices nationally. We like to say we have offices from Portland to Portland. We're headquartered in Portland, Maine, and we have an office in Portland, Oregon. Working in a diverse geographic area has really given me the opportunity to really recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to siting wireless infrastructure in the right-of-way. You really need to be a chameleon to be able to fit in Jersey City, New Jersey one night and Atoka, Oklahoma the next night. I'm still working on my southern accent. However, even though there's really no one-size-fits-all approach, I think if we understand the legal framework that we're working with and focus on some good strategies, some best practices, we can really make some good advances in the deployment of wireless infrastructure. I'm terrible with these. All right. So looking at the legal framework that we're working with with federal law, the Telecommunications Act, National Environmental Policy Act, everyone's favorite, National Historic Preservation Act, FCC, in particular, the reports and orders that they've been coming out with interpreting law, the FAA, and certain case law. At the state level, we're seeing a lot of states that are implementing their own small wireless facilities deployment or siting acts, and of course local municipal ordinances, which are of varying usefulness when we're working in the right-of-way. So I know that our previous speaker just covered a lot of this, so I won't belabor the point, but some of the key provisions of federal law, I really harp on everyone in our office using the term small wireless facility as a good housekeeping matter. A small wireless facility has a definition under federal law and under a lot of state laws. It's a volumetric size definition. And in order to invoke the legal protections under state and federal law, it's really important to make sure that we're using the same terms that are used in the law. Some of the recent federal interpretations of law have said that effective prohibition also includes actions that would prevent a carrier from densifying their network, from deploying new technologies, and from making improvements to their technologies. So we're moving away from where effective prohibition only applies to network coverage, and we're moving into additional technologies. RF safety, I've heard that brought up a couple of times today. I think we're seeing a resurgence of RF hysteria with the advent of 5G. We've seen some articles in some legitimate publications. I think it was the Washington Post maybe that had an article about a week ago discussing potential health concerns for 5G. I was at a council meeting last night where somebody stood up and spoke for about 10 minutes about RF safety and his concerns over 5G. This is also in a town just over the Hudson River from here. Very small, very densely populated, and we're in the midst of a deployment where some new poles are going in. We're finding graffiti on the poles that says 5G causes cancer. 5G is a weapons-grade military technology. It's going to read your mind. It's going to fry your endo-rinse system, as they spelled it. So we're finding that the provisions of federal law that protect carriers from having siting decisions made on the basis of RF safety and environmental effects is actually very useful even now. Obviously, there have been some discussions around fees and shot clocks, and that has been more favorable to wireless carriers lately, along with reasonable aesthetic requirements. I left the NEPA and NHPA exceptions in there, even though the most recent FCC order was just reversed by the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, but there are still a number of exemptions that apply. We're seeing a lot of states enacting small wireless facilities legislation. Right now we have, I think, 29 states that have some sort of legislation of varying usefulness. I would say right in the middle of the country, what someone referred to earlier as flyover countries, they tend to be really favorable to wireless carriers. I've been doing a lot of work in Oklahoma lately, and they have a provision that prohibits a jurisdiction from collecting more than $20 per year per facility, which is substantially less than the $270 that we see at the federal level. We're also seeing state level shot clocks, but with a deemed approved remedy. Wouldn't that be great? That I believe is in Kansas. And then in Illinois, we're seeing some limitations on what a jurisdiction can require a carrier to provide in their application. So we're seeing some states really dive in and even go further than the federal law. We're also seeing some states like my home state of Maine, which put out a one-page piece of legislation that does virtually nothing. So we have some catching up to do there. And then at the municipal level, I think we range from municipalities that have adopted small wireless facilities ordinances that either work with their state laws or work with the federal laws. And then we're seeing municipalities that have no ordinances at all that are applicable. I did walk into a town in Oklahoma a couple of months ago trying to track down somebody to talk to, and the woman I spoke to said, "You want to do what now?" Had no idea what I was talking about. So I'm actually really excited when I go on a municipal website, and first of all, they had a website, and second of all, they have ordinances, and they have ordinances that are applicable to small wireless facilities, because that means that they've actually thought about this. A lot of towns still haven't thought about it and don't really know how they want to deal with it. Sometimes they try to push you into their traditional telecommunications ordinance. That's obviously not going to work in the right of way. It's a completely different type of development. Sometimes they're going to push you to right of way or public works departments, which is great if they're just treating you as a utility when you're deploying the infrastructure. But the problem is once you get 3 or 4 of these up and people start saying that they're wireless, then you have other municipal officials getting involved. And you really want to make sure that you check all of those boxes ahead of time. So some best practices that we like to use when we're deploying either on behalf of carriers, on behalf of SQF, the infrastructure owner. We try to make smart siting decisions. To us, a smart siting decision is putting a pole on a property line, on a corner, not directly in front of somebody's bedroom window, places where they're outside of somebody's view shed. If they're looking right outside of their living room window, they probably don't want to see a pole with an antenna on it. Just because you can put it there probably doesn't mean that you should. Paying attention to aesthetic sensitivity if you're deploying in areas with underground utilities that have some decorative fixtures. Try to match those decorative fixtures as much as you can. I always try to use the law as a shield and not a sword. I try not to go in and demand a decision within 60 or 90 days just because the law may require that. You try to be a little bit more subtle about it and work with the municipality. I would rather have something take 180 days and have it go through smoothly and form a good relationship with that municipality. That's going to make it a lot easier when you come back for 5 or 10 or 20 more sites in 6 months. Working with the municipal officials, like I said, forming that relationship, really important. You want to show up with a plan, be able to explain the technology, and be prepared to make some concessions. In that municipality just across the Hudson that I was mentioning, we've got over 100 sites that we're deploying for a carrier, and we have walked every single one of them with council members and engineers multiple times. And we've moved some sites. We've completely eliminated a couple of sites. Every town has that one person that the town just doesn't want to deal with. Don't put a pole in front of their house. In this town, it's Mary. And you want to be flexible and patient. A lot of people don't understand the technology. They want to make sure that their constituents are comfortable with what they're doing, and they're going to need some time to get to yes. I think I'm out of time, so I will skip over that and just throw out my contact information. I love talking about this stuff. I'll be here for the rest of the day and throughout the social hour, so if anyone wants to talk about citing in the right-of-way, I'd love to talk to you. Thank you.